Hello, hello, hello. This is Laura from Polis Network, one of the moderators of this e-course, your favorite moderator, but shh, don't tell Alessia. I'm kidding, of course. So welcome. If you're here, that means that you have completed the units 1, 2, 3, and 4 of this e-course. So congratulations. And that also means that you're ready to apply all of those concepts and skills into the Capstone project. I'm here to guide you through this. The Capstone project is part of Unit 5. In Unit 5, there are 3 modules. The first one, I hope that you have already seen and taken a look at. The first one really gives you some preliminary information into the assignment, and it introduces you to the wonderful city of Smartia, a mid-sized fictional city in the Mediterranean Sea that is for the first time developed in their SUMP, and that have chosen, amongst everyone else, you to develop their engagement strategy for this SUMP development process. And this is the main goal of the assignment. In Module 5.2, while you are watching it right now, it's this little video where we wanted to guide you a little bit through the assignment with a very little example. I'm not going to do a full-on example, but really just to let you know how are you supposed to work, how are you supposed to fill in this assignment. And then finally, in 5.3, you will find some resources, some additional resources, the summary cards. You need to use, as we said, the concepts from the units 2, 3, and 4. And we thought that it could be a little bit cumbersome. If you have to go through all the modules one by one, it would take you just more time than needed. So in module 5.3, you will find the summary cards. The summary cards are a way of presenting the information, especially from units 3 and 4, in a way that you can easily go through it while developing the engagement strategy, and it will be a very, very good help for you, as you are going to see. But let's start from the beginning, which is the assignment. Besides the 3 modules, you will find a little task that is a document, a PowerPoint that you need to download and fill in, and later resubmit to the Mobility Academy by when? By December 23rd. So just before Christmas holidays, we want you to give us the best Christmas present, which is that you have all submitted your capstone project in time. Yay! So let's start with this PowerPoint that you're going to download. This is what it looks like. It's exactly the same document that we are going to use. Of course, the first thing, the obvious things that you need to do is to fill in your name and the date where you finalize it. But I mean, I know that you don't need me to tell you this. And the first slides of the assignment is really just the wording of the exercise. As I've said already a couple of times, it's about building the engagement strategy for the SUMP of Smartia. You will have a marketing campaign of 19,000 euros, a total budget of 90,000 euros. So these you will need to distribute alongside all the SUMP phases. Important for you to have this into account. This is the money that you can use for selecting different engagement methods and marketing campaigns. Simple, no? What you will need to do is fill in the slides from this PowerPoint that we're going to see. You will need to select for each SUMP phase the marketing techniques and engagement methods that you think are more appropriate for that phase and for the SUMP that it's being developed in Smartia. Of course, you will need to identify what are the group of stakeholders that you're going to involve in your selected methods and techniques, and what are the costs that are associated with them, because this is the constraint from the exercise. You can only use the 19,000 euros from the budget. To make it a little bit spicier, we also decided that you need to indicate if there are special circumstances affecting your methods and techniques. For example, COVID. If you do an online event, obviously COVID is not going to have a big impact, but if you want to do a public event, then it may need. So you need to really identify these and indicate it when necessary. So as I mentioned, there are two guidance materials. One is this video that you're watching right now, and the other one is the module 5.3, the summary cards. The summary cards will start with the indication of the relationship between the different techniques and the engagement methods. As we have seen during the units, there are some techniques that are associated with some specific engagement methods, and this is what also you need to do. We ask you not to mix and match however you think, because this is the way that it has been created, prepared, and also the most logical way, let's say, of applying them. So you have first these slides that can be a good guidance for you, and then you have the more specific cards, which are, you can see here. So this is an example of all the cards. You have one of these cards for each of the techniques and each of the methods. You will differentiate the techniques from the methods, because the techniques are surrounded by a circle and the methods are just the icon. As for instance, you can see here, this is a marketing technique, and here, no. And here, this is an engagement method. So in each of the cards, what you find is, well, the technique and the method. What are the participation methods for the techniques that are related to it? In this case, it would be the raising awareness campaign and the public event. And then you also find some colors. The colors indicate what are the appropriate SUMP phases that they can be used for. For example, the public event is really for the first phase and the fourth phase, whereas the raising awareness campaign can be used in the 4 stages of the SUMP. So this is why it's very useful for you for this exercise, because you need to use some specific techniques and methods depending on the phase that you're working on, and this can help you guide you through those choices. Then you also have the participants, the citizens of all age, or is it selected as stakeholders, and then you have the cost as well as the time frame that indicates in which phase. The cost is going to depend on the characteristics of your chosen event, and this is really what you need to think about, using a little bit of common sense. So if you're going to do an event that lasts for a week, obviously it's not going to cost the same as if you just do a raising awareness campaign that is just some flyers sent out via letter. So what we are asking for is just for you to use a little bit of common sense of what represents the cheaper cost and what is the most expensive option. And this cost is associated both to the marketing techniques and to the engagement methods, but we are asking you to use the cost associated with engagement methods as your guiding cost in the exercise, meaning that if I decide to use, you always have to couple one technique and one method at least. You can couple one technique with 2 methods or 2 techniques with 1 method. This depends a little bit on you, but the point is that the method is the one that is going to be the guiding cost. So if I decide that I'm going to use a word of mouth and I'm going to do so in the raising awareness campaign, then what I'm going to choose for the cost is the raising awareness campaign. I have decided to do an offline campaign, as I said, that is really about one event where you're going to talk and such. So it's really the cheapest cost. This is all a hypothesis. Don't just use such a basic thought process as I have, but just to indicate that the engagement method is what determines the cost in each of the SUMP phases. And now let's continue with the assignment. So as I said already a couple of times, you need to download these slides, fill them in, and submit them to the Mobility Academy in the same unit by December 23rd. And in module 5.1, which can be considered also as guidance for the exercise, you had the preliminary information about SMARSHA, some key transport and demographic indicators, as well as some macro objective of SMARSHA. It's important that you use all of this information in your exercise to guide it, that you don't just make random choices, but they actually have a purpose. What I mean is that, for example, we saw that there is a big percentage of old people. So then you will, of course, need to have some targeted events for the old people. You cannot just have all online engagement methods, because obviously this is not going to be a good engagement strategy, because there is a whole part of the population that you will not be engaging. So this is what we mean. What can you do? The macro objectives of SMARTia, the same. They are the ones that guide the SUMP, so especially important for the phases 2, the strategy development and the measure planning. Both the strategy of this SUMP is well determined by the objectives, but as well as the small measures that is determined between what we know, so the preliminary information, with the objectives. So you need to think about how to communicate about this. This is what gives you the essence of the SUMP. And what else do you need? Well, just be creative. I mean, we are really giving you a blank page for you to fill in and to create the engagement strategy. We are giving you all of these resources and an imaginary budget of 90,000 euros. So just show us what you would do with this. Before starting and going through the example itself, just a little tip. You have 90,000 euros. As a starting point, I would recommend you to do a first distribution between the phases. It can be an equal distribution. You can choose 20,000 for one and 30,000 for the other, but this will be a good starting point, and it will allow you to have a little bit of a balance, let's say, a strategy. This doesn't mean that you cannot just modify it as you go, but that way you know that you are not going to go back because you spent all of your money and you need to have a little bit more. Just a very simple basic tip. So this is the card that you will find at each of the phases of the SUMP in the exercise. Does it sound familiar? Well, it should, because I have just showed it to you in the summary cards. So you will basically have to summarize all of all of your techniques and methods into the card. You will select the marketing techniques in the blue box, all of the icons identified in module 5.3, the engagement methods in the yellow box. You will need to indicate which of the SUMP phases is this card related to, the cost of all the methods selected. One coin equals 5,000 euros out of the 90,000. And you will also indicate if it's a general citizenship kind of method, or if there's for different types of stakeholders, like public administration, transport operators, business associations, whatever you think, but different, let's say, just different than the general citizenship. So for the example, then I'm just going to give you a selection for the first SUMP phase. So in each of the phases, remember that there are 4 phases, you will find 3 slides. The last one is the summary card. The first one is the guidance, I would say, where you can see the SUMP phase that we are talking about, with the different activities that are part of this phase, and then the guidance questions for you to develop the strategy for the phase. So by looking at the phase, what you should do is really to try to understand which phase are we in, to try to understand what is the goal of the phase, what will I need to do to engage, what would exactly would be the goal of my engagement. So this is phase 1, preparation and analysis. So the goal is, on the one hand, to inform about the process. You are going to set up some working structures, to make some decisions, so to inform about this, to start the relationship. And then on the second hand, is also to gather information for the analysis, to understand the current needs. So this is the 2 things that you should have in mind when selecting the different engagement methods. And then what you will need to do is just, well, first, who is involved in this phase, who is involved in what the engagement methods that you need. Then you will need to look into the methods of engagement. The first question, actually the last one here, is really, what is your goal? What is the goal? What are you trying to do? As I said, as for my example, my goal is to inform, and to gather some information. So this is what I'm going to have in mind when choosing the engagement methods. And then finally is the communication channels that you will need the communication channels that you will need to decide, which is very much related also to the marketing technique that you're going to use. So what is going to be the duration, the cost associated with it, etc. So this is really what you need to decide. We have prepared this slide to guide you through your decisions. And then in the second slide, you find the same one but empty, where you need to write up everything that you decide. So this is what we are going to decide now. I'm not going to write it here, of course, but I'm just going to tell you a little bit. So I have decided that we are going to do an informing and gathering of information. So I have decided to use the dialogue marketing technique because it's good to establishing an interactive relationship and it can be used in different engagement methods. I have chosen to use those that are appropriate for the first SUMP phase. So those that have here a yellow, which is the surveys and the focus group. I have chosen two different methods for a reason, which if I was you right now and I was doing the exercise, I will have to write it down in the slide. I'm gonna do a survey. I'm gonna do an online survey. We are going to assume that we already have a platform, a website. So if there is some information that you don't know, you can make assumptions. But once again, please use common sense. Second, indicate it, because we are not going to assume the same thing that you assumed. So I'm just letting you know that I assume that we already have a website and the survey is going to be online. And because we already have the platform, then I believe that the cost is going to be the minimum of the threshold, which is 10,000 euros. Then I have decided that this is not enough because a big group of the population would be excluded. So I have decided also to do a focus group with old people. This would really help me gather all the information that I need. With the online survey, I will gather a bit of information on the more general citizenship, whereas with the focus group, I'm tackling a group that is very important for Smartshare, that perhaps in the past haven't been considered as much, but that is definitely aligned with their macro objectives. So the cost for this one is fixed, it's 10,000 euros. So I don't really need to think about anything else. So once I have decided this, you can see, by the way, the icons here associated with the different marketing technique. So I would go back to the slide. Well, all of this information I have just told you, and there is no need in you seeing me type the information, but basically all of these decisions that I've made, what you need to do is type them down so that we know where are they coming from. So in the target audience, I wouldn't just put general citizenship, I would put that on the one hand, but also elderly as a targeted group for the focus group. And I would explain why I did that. In the methods of engagement, I would explain the survey as well as the focus group and why have I decided to do this, what is the purpose, how long am I going to have the survey on, etc. And then the communication channels, where in my case it would be the platform that we already say, the digital platform, and a meeting for a face-to-face meeting, as well as how am I going to reach for these old people. Then do I have already an idea? If so, please write it down. So we are going to use our very powerful imagination as if all of these have already been written down with all of this information. And then the next step would be to summarize the information in the card. I've already developed all of the, we have thought about the strategy, so now it's just time to sum it up. So in the card, I would just put the techniques that I use. In this case, I'm using the dialogue marketing technique with the survey and the focus group. I'm just doing a small example. You may want to use different techniques associated with different methods. the world is open, feel free to do so. So this is just an example, but you could either have more in this card, or if they are very different, very different techniques and methods used in the same phase, you can also just duplicate this slide and have 2 summary cards for the same phase. This is okay for us. So then once I have selected this, the next thing is indicate which is the time frame. This is the first phase, so the yellow one. And then the cost. We have said that it was 10,000 euros for the survey, 10,000 euros for the focus group. So in total, 20,000, which means that it's 4 of the coins. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Done. And then finally, this is actually both the general citizenship and selected stakeholders. You, of course, we don't have a specific icon for each of the stakeholders. So here is just a summary, you put it like this, but please indicate if there are specific stakeholders that you're targeting, indicate that in the previous slide, in the slide with all the information about your strategy. This is just a summary slide at the end to also see that you have grasped all the concepts and to make sure, especially for the costs, that everything makes sense. And this is it. This is, I have chosen a technique, I have chosen my goals, my engagement methods. Obviously, it's a very basic example. We want you to go the extra mile, but I think that it's good for you to understand how to go ahead. And then basically you have the same 3 slides for each of the SUMP phases. And this is what you will have to do until the end, where you have the milestone slide, where we want you to add here all of the engagement methods used in your SUMP in chronological order to also have that further vision of the exercise. And with this, you would have finished the Capstone project once that you have done this exercise for each of the phases. And the only thing missing is just for you to submit. And that's it. Remember that you have to submit before the 23rd of December. And that's really all from my side. If this video wasn't enough, or if you have specific questions that I haven't really responded here, don't doubt in using the discussion forum. Alessia and I check that very often. And if you have any questions, you can either do it there, or if you prefer to do it privately for whatever reason, you can also just send us directly an email and we will respond to you as soon as possible. Both our emails are in the last slide, and that's all that you need to know. I hope that you found this video useful, and I wish you good luck when completing the project Capstone. And because we won't see each other before, I wish you Merry Christmas, and I hope that you spent a very nice time for the holidays. Goodbye.